Q Harrison, Terry, what do you think so far? How are we
Man,
doing?
we've been good. Hold on, I'll join up back on video. But can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, no, I mean I've been good. I think that I've learned a lot. Daniel Hill's presentation was like super fascinating to me, mainly because his whole point towards creating content that you can do on the regular daily is something that I don't think we hear enough of, and it really is the difference between making an impact and not, because it's the best way to think about it in not being the social media realm is simply put this way. If you do something weekly, you've got 52 chances in a year to get someone's attention. There's so many things competing with people's attention or just for their time nowadays that 52 shots might have been enough 25 years ago. But in 2020, that is not enough times to grab and really own any type of narrative or conversation or be even included. And with that, you now jump into a world where maybe you say bi-weekly, or I mean, not bi-weekly, maybe you say like 2 times a week, or maybe you say 7 times a week, and which is every day. And then you start to think about like, well, how can I do that? Well, there's a lot of things we do daily. We brush our teeth daily. We talk to probably someone daily. And these are things that we don't have a big cognitive load or friction into doing. And creating a pathway where you can kind of do whatever you will brand yourself as, or whatever your company is kind of built out of, so that it translates over into the social realm is going to be the delta between those that get marketing, moving forward, and those that don't. The problem right now is it's not very easy to figure that part out. So, TikTok, it came and existed for a while, and now we're moving on to another format, or platform, but the format is still here. Like, I mean, the 15-second clips where you kind of express or tell a story. I remember you, Paul, you were experimenting with that very heavily. So every time I'd get on TikTok, it was always, your face, and like you were telling me more about Alexa. And it was a cool to see you kind of grow and utilize that format in different ways. There's going to be a lot of formats that exist. Alexa is one of those platforms, the flash briefings and the evolution of that. The RSS feed was a format, for blogs 10, 15 years ago. And now, like, you can have a vlog or, a YouTube channel or whatever to like take that place. The question it becomes now, how do you do that in an easy and repeatable manner? And I like Daniel's point towards that notion of like, hey, let me think about this where it's going to be a small victory a day that wins the war over time. So uh,
Yeah.
overall, great content.
Yeah. Great insights there, Q. Really appreciate it. I agree. I was gonna go into ask you actually real quick before we're gonna start this next session now, because it's gonna actually, I think, probably get us back on time to get all of the pre-recorded stuff in before Jeff Blankenberg joins us live at 1:30 Central Time. But before we do that, so Mike Antaran, you're going to be up here in a second. But before we do that, Q, tell us, like, how do you create, like, break it down real quick. What are some tactics to actually create that much content and publish that much content every day? I mean, you and Ryan Cowdery are a team that has done that. And Ryan, I think Ryan's still on with us right now. I know you have to be incredibly organized. You have to be incredibly thoughtful, and you have to use tools that help you save time. How have you done that personally as an entrepreneur with like multiple plates spinning at all times?
Yeah. So one thing that's helped me is you're always capturing. So you should always be recording. You should always be, putting things in. And usually, do I use all that stuff? No. Like it goes into an archive. And then when it's time to plan and strategize, you've got tons of assets that you can use that can be repurposed, or that can be just transformed into something that can go the distance and is presentable. I also think that having an ability or skill helps widely with this. So if you look at a person that can write and it's not a burden on them to write, then making a daily newsletter is probably an easy task for them. They're like, okay, let me sit down. I got to get to 300 words or 300 to 500 words. I'm gonna just do that. Maybe that takes them, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. Versus someone that's much more a visual person, and they can design or lay something out in Canva or Photoshop or whatever the tool is. And that might take them 15 to 30 minutes. You want to find that skill that you have that allows you to just work really, really fast and really not spend any time learning the system or the tool. And then it just becomes it becomes all about consistency. Like, do you carve out 25 minutes a day to do whatever said thing you're going to do, and create space so that you can let your mind rest as well. So the way I personally do it is we have a calendar, and me and Ryan, we hold each other accountable. Like if I'm missing some assets and he needs those in order to finish his end of the bargain, then like he's sweating me to get those in. And I know if I don't get those in, we might break the chain. Like we might have a 150-day streak going, and because I was lazy one day, we're gonna lose that streak. And so that's it's one part accountability, one part just knowing what your skill set is that you can do better or quicker than most. And then the last part is knowing what you're talking about or whom you're talking to. Because if you're just going to be general every day, well, then you're going to be all over the place, at the end of a year, and no one's going to really learn anything, and you won't be a thought leader on any specific topic because you were all over the place. What I love about Bradley Metrock, and I think he might have dropped off, is he only creates content that lives in the realm of voice. That's a big undertaking, but at the same time, year over year, there's a perpetual growth for him in that field, and he becomes more and more of a thought leader, so he can go and work with the Harvard. And that's what I have to add to that. I know we've got to jump to another conversation, so if people have questions, message me on the chat.
Sounds great. Thanks, Q. All right, up next, we've got everybody queued up and live with us for the next roundtable discussion: voice in education, gaming, security, cybersecurity, and market research. Mike Antaran, the CEO of Carrot Wellness, is an amazing platform. I'll let Mike tell us more about that. But he's up next. And Mike, thank you for joining us. You're in Michigan right now, is that right?
I am. Thank you, Paul. First of all, thank you, the Voice event, and Paul and his team for including me and the Carrot team on this at the Voice event. I'm thrilled to be here. I've been excited about this event for a while, and we're going to make the most of it, right? This is how we do it, right? So as Paul mentioned, I think we met, it was less than a year ago, maybe. It was November last year, and we had a podcast that you put me on. I've gotten a lot of people bring that up to me, that they've seen it, they heard about it. But since then, it was a year ago when we launched our Alexa skill at that time, and it's going very well. It's pretty solid. As Paul mentioned, so I'm the CEO of an application called Carrots, carrotwellness.com. And my story is really simple. I started in the automotive industry, just like Paul said, in Michigan, Detroit. I was in the automotive industry for about 15 years, and I decided to leave and be a dad. So I've been raising my 3 kids under the age of 15. Now I have a sophomore in high school. It's been pretty challenging with school and the younger kids, if anybody has kids, how that is. But I tell you, my whole life has changed in becoming this mobile game designer. And with a supportive wife, I became a game designer that made mobile video games, right? And this happened in about 2012 is when I left the industry. And then fast forward 2 years later, my wife approached me and she wasn't happy with things. She was concerned I was contributing to an unhealthy behavior in society where kids and adults were playing our games 1 to 2 hours a day, and they were sitting more and moving less. And so as an engineer, I decided to do something about that and be part of the solution and not the problem. And I created a game called Carrot, and Carrot is a mobile app that rewards you financially for walking. And a year ago is when we transformed it being a mobile app to entering into the voice space. And so people can understand what they need to walk every day in order to improve their daily life. And it's just a little bit of time. It's that little carrot that we provide to get people to move a little bit more every day, to instill a healthier behavior and being more active each day. So since then, it's been a whirlwind at the time, and we can talk about this a little bit more, make this more of an interaction here, Paul. But the University of Michigan asked me to teach at the Center of Entrepreneurship College of Engineering program, the Alexa skill and developing Alexa skill apps. So I was part of the Amazon Alexa Fellowship, where I would teach aspiring entrepreneurs to build Alexa skills, and it's been phenomenal at the University of Michigan to do that.
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, I feel like we could do a whole other session on that. I see Julie Daniel Davis nodding her head as well, so I think there's probably some good conversations we would all have about that. So how did you make the business? I mean, your story is phenomenal. Like, you go from a career in the automotive world, and then you become a mobile game designer, and you build a business around mobile gaming apps on top of I'm going to assume iOS devices mainly, and then you pivot to tapping into the pedometer on the iOS and Android devices to build Carrot. You sell that to larger organizations now as like a fitness competition. How do you make the business decision to incorporate an Alexa skill? And what have been the how is the adoption of the Alexa skill? Like, explain to everybody how do you add that to a mobile app? Why do you add it to a mobile app, and how has the adoption gone?
Oh, that's a great question, Paul. So as an engineer, I need data to help guide my my features, right? One of the biggest things is it's from an app design thing. You can't just build it and everybody's going to start using it, right? So what from an engineering perspective, I really wanted to take the data of how people are using my application and understand what features do I have to implement to keep us ahead of the game, or leapfrog our competition and keep ahead of our competition, right? And when I look at that space of that mobile wellness space, we started off as truly only mobile. And when I looked at that 5 years ago, the competition, it was a web app that was incorporating their website into getting the people to move, and it was just really contradictory for me from an engineering perspective. Is you want people to move, but you're having them be on a desktop to access their health, right? It just doesn't make any sense to me. And they didn't move into the mobile space, and that's what mobility is. Having the ability to walk, to do something else while accomplishing what your tasks are. So, walking is one of those things that you can do, while at the computer desk, so you can stand. There's a lot of different elements of having a healthier aspect in doing your job. And I started incorporating that and taking that design thinking of how do I create an app that is very relevant to somebody that needs to start moving in these types of scenarios. And it's very relevant today, with the remote worker out there. And that's where we have shifted. We started to look at the data of how people are using Carrot, how people are engaging at their work. So one of the things, taking a step back, Carrot is being used as a wellness program for organizations. So organizations such as DTE Energy is using Carrot to motivate their 13,000 employees to walk more. So what we have are different games inside Carrot that entice everybody to play in order to play any of these games, they have to walk. So there's this weekend, there's the PGA Championship that's going on right now. And members of DTE, employees of DTE are using our app to play the PGA Champions Versus game. So in order to play the different, select any of the players, you have to walk to select, Ricky Fowler, right? And Dustin Johnson in order to play. So it's like fantasy, fantasy golf meets Tinder, right? You just kind of play this game, and you need your currency of walking in order to play it. And it's the new water cooler talk, virtual water cooler talk that happens. There's this leaderboard that's happening just for DTE employees to see how they're ranking and how they're playing against their other fellow friends at DTE. So it's just this type of engagement that's happening on the mobile app. What we moved to is, engaging how your position is using voice, right? It's a simple, how am I doing on Versus? Alexa, how am I doing on Versus on Carrot, right? So it really becomes this really interactive play that's out there. One of the things, like you're saying, Paul, is when we took a step back and said, well, how are we going to get Carrot, a mobile app and walking activity app, to be on voice, right? There's a lot of different ideas that floated up around there, but one of the best ideas that, and there's a lot, but it's very little at the same time. One of the keen ideas that we really touched upon was we looked at our gift card and reward system, right? So the way Carrot works is you earn currency for walking and making your daily goals. And if you meet your goal, you get Carrot coins, and you can use those Carrot coins to get digital gift cards on our platform. So what we implemented was an interesting new game. It's called Carrot Auctions. And we looked at, when you look at an auction, a live auction is very voice driven, right? You got the auctioneer calling out values of how much somebody wants a bid for. And we took that concept and we applied it to voice. So what we have right now is, and I'll send everybody a link to it. This is a link on our chat. I put a voice event sponsored $20 of gift cards out there, $10 for Amazon, $10 for Google Play. But the idea here is in 17 minutes or 16 minutes, everybody can use their voice to bid for this gift card using their currency inside Carrot. So I just published this at about an hour ago, and so now around a minute before this happens, people will get a push notification and they can start bidding on this reward. And the whole idea behind this is people can use their voice to bid for this reward. Now with, as Brad Metlock mentioned, Alexa 2.0 is upon us, and a lot of the different new features inside Alexa Skills and Alexa Skills 2.0 are the Alexa web apps for games, and we're really starting to take advantage of that, of those features that were just announced not too long ago, less than a month ago. Here's a link to this, but you can ultimately provide great web content games inside your voice application. So this is how we're doing what we're doing with Alexa and our Alexa skill with auctions. Because if somebody outbids you, it's very difficult to know that unless you ask Alexa again, what can I bid on? So now once somebody outbids you, Alexa is going to key back in and listen to your next bid. Somebody just outbid you from Spain, for instance. Do you want to outbid them?
Amazing. That's great. I love that. That's really taking advantage of the new capabilities with Alexa 2.0. I've used your Alexa skill on Carrot because Data-Driven Design had a Carrot competition not too long ago, and it was super fun. I used the Alexa skill to check in on the leaderboard and my Carrot points. And knowing, what you're saying, it makes so much sense because, like, if you have the Echo Buds, like you can just take that with you while you're walking and check in on Carrot rather than being behind your desktop or definitely when you look at your mobile device, you're going to get more information, but it sounds like actually you're moving in the direction of you might be able to do just as much or more beneficial things when you're on the go with the voice app on top of Carrot. Is that right?
Yeah. So one of the nice things is because we know when people engage with us, and to really answer that second part of your question there, Paul, we incentivize people using our voice skill, right, on Carrot.
Okay.
So if you, for instance, if you engage with us 7 days in a row, we'll give you some extra currency inside of Carrot. So that's the whole idea is, we use incentives. And it's a problem for any skill, right? Discovery is always a problem. And with the new Alexa Skill 2.0 coming out, just like Bradley mentioned, the quick links, those are huge game changers. And with my limited marketing budget, what we try to do is really work with the people that already have our skill or already have our app to market to. And we incentivize them to use the voice skills to get that adoption, to get that use inside Carrot. And what we do is just like many is we listen to how people are criticizing us on our reviews to make changes from there, right? So adoption on the onset was really high because we really incentivized the download of the skill through the app. And now we're getting a consistent use of the app because we have mini games that happen like streaks. We're looking at having flash briefings and utilizing that. The auctions is a huge play from a voice perspective. Now that people are working from home, they can actually do an auction using voice as opposed to doing a voice auction at work is not very conducive to that. So there's some benefits to being remotely working now versus how it was before, right? So it's all really exciting. It's all about being on top of your game and looking at the data to make decisions and how you're going to implement these features.
Yeah, that's awesome. Michael, Antaran, thank you so much for adding so much value to the voice event today. It's great to see you, and hopefully we'll be talking again soon. And if you can stick around, that'd be amazing. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thanks, Mike. Julie Daniel Davis is up next. She's an Alexa champion, so she has a pretty strong background in voice. Can you tell us, Julie, a little bit about that and why? How did you get into voice?
Yeah. So as of May, I retired as the Director of Instructional Technology, early retired. I'm not old enough to retire, just for the record. As the Director of Instructional Technology and Innovation at a local school here in town. And in that role, I was always looking for what's the next innovation that's out there that educators and students could benefit from. So immediately when the original Amazon Alexa came out, the big giant cylinder one, I bought one. I tried putting it into a middle school classroom and said, nope, not gonna happen. There's just too many questions, too many things that I was concerned about. As time went on and things started to develop more within the Alexa community, I realized that there are some things we can do and some things that we could use. But more importantly, I think as educators, we have to be kind of on the cutting edge and be aware of what's coming so that it doesn't happen to us, but that we can speak into that space. So that's kind of how I became an Alexa champion. I created a flash briefing called Voice in Education, and that flash briefing was to help educators think critically the pros and cons about using voice and what's next and what is voice technology and all those type of things. And that kind of became my bridge into the voice community. Before there was Project Voice, there was the Alexa conference. And the very first year that it happened in Chattanooga, Bradley Matrock and I connected, and I started speaking to developers about, hey, this is exciting for us as educators, but we are concerned about these things, and here's what we would like to see. So it's just given me a foot into the door to speak into this space, and it's been really fun to watch it develop over the years.
So what's the state of the union like right now with voice in education? And I'm sure you're talking about this on your flash briefing, but why should educators, students, and parents take voice seriously right now?
Yeah, I think with pandemic learning, students were pushed home. You're talking about voice, which is a natural no-touch interface. You're also talking about something that's already immersed in the home space already. So for teachers to take advantage of using Alexa or Google Assistant, for those of you who don't know, you don't even have to actually own the device to be able to access it on your phone. So you can put those apps on there, and a teacher can talk to her students by using a flash briefing, or push out information every morning, where that what research is showing us is that even though students are home, they need that interaction with their teachers. So to actually hear their teacher's voice on a daily or weekly basis, I think is important. It also gives opportunities for parents to start looking for other ways to do at-home learning. One of my recent blog posts were different skills, third-party skills that are out there, just to make parents aware, hey, you've got this in your home. If you're struggling with continuing education, try embedding some of these skills into what's going on. I think the opportunity is wide and varied, but I think the biggest concern in education is student privacy. And so I've been a part of the Open Voice Network, which is a nonprofit that's working and I am on the educational steering committee to help create ethics and standards for voice so that students and educators can use this robustly without having to work around certain systems.
So on the voice in education flash briefing, back to kind of what Daniel Hill was talking about with his Instagram flash briefing. How often do you put out content on that flash briefing? What are some of the wins that you've had with that venture? And what are some of the challenges around sort of having and managing an Alexa flash briefing?
Yeah, I've started it, I guess, February of 2019. So I'm on episode 80 something right now because I'm a weekly podcast. The beauty of using Alexa flash briefings is that your content has to be 10 minutes or less. And that may seem like, well, what are you actually saying? But for my audience, my niche, an educator doesn't have 30 minutes, 45 minutes to sit and listen to a podcast. And while there was a point in time where I thought, well, I'll just expand this podcast, what I saw was my listeners went down. So the flash briefing is very useful to meet the needs of someone who just wants quick information. And I started off by just sharing tips on how to do it in a safe way. And now I find myself really interviewing people, letting them know about different companies that are out there that they might be interested in. I think for the last 10 or so podcasts, users didn't really hear from me. They heard about other people out there that are creating content for educational purposes. So there's great value in that. The hardest part of a flash briefing for me is keeping it under that 10-minute limit, because you start talking, you have all these questions, and when you're doing an interview, I find myself, it's time to wrap it up. We're at 8 minutes. We've got to get to this. So it's making sure that whoever you're talking to has that ability to succinctly talk about what you're doing. And then that opened up to where my podcast is now available on a lot of different platforms as well. So some people don't even go through the flash briefing. They go directly to Anchor. I learned from Daniel to now use Plink, which I'm going to drop that link because he's already taught me something. So that is a very helpful thing for the future too. But I think it's important with your podcast to make sure you're reaching your niche and you're reaching them with things that are interesting to them. You know, for me to continually talk and just say the same things over and over wasn't beneficial. Coming up, I've got the winner of the European EdTech Skills Challenge that's going to share. I've had my first podcast sponsorship for the last 8 weeks. So that's been really exciting to see how this is all developing.
That's amazing. Congratulations. Well, one of the things I love about having gotten involved in voice over the last few years is meeting people like you, meeting people like Bradley, Stewart, all these other folks, Daniel. And so thank you so much for your time and being part of the voice event and adding value. I really, really appreciate it. And speaking of some of my quiet favorite people, up next is Dr. Paul Mcneil. He's one of my quiet favorites. He and I met at Nashville Design Week in November of 2019. And I was presenting on designing for voice, and he and I just like clicked. And then we spent some time at Project Voice together. I know, Paul is a very talented developer. He's got a background in cybersecurity. He asked me a question at my presentation in November about cybersecurity within voice. And I'm curious to talk to him about a lot of different things today. So Paul, first of all, thank you for joining us. It's good to see you.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
So coming from cybersecurity, what are some steps the average business can take to make sure that their voice apps are secure and maintain user privacy?
I would say that it's very similar to what a small business should be thinking about in securing their customer data in the first place. You take that from the physical world and apply it to digital. So you want to think about who's going to have access to the data, where you're storing it after the fact. You want to think about do you need to encrypt that data that you're offloading? I think that you also need to think about how where you're storing it. Like, what is the cybersecurity posture of, like, are you using Airtable or something like that? And is it secure enough for the type of information that you're storing? So really keeping your customer in mind. And sometimes even as simple as, if I was my customer, what would I want done with my information if I didn't know what was going on behind the scenes?
So Paul, you run, your company is called MBUsable Security. Are there any cybersecurity privacy concerns that are specific to voice apps that are often overlooked?
Yes. I would say that one of the main things is context, right? So where are people using these applications? So I think a lot of times we get really excited about voice being first, and we don't always think about, is the type of information that I'm asking for something that someone should be saying out loud? So are there times when we need to push something either through the Amazon or send a link or something that people can log in silently? Maybe I'm in a crowd of people or something like that. An example of that would be something sometimes in the healthcare, right? You might not want to go through whatever list, whether it's a diagnosis or some kind of understanding of some diagnosis you've received in public, because that might be a little more private. So just thinking about that as far as the user experience is concerned.
Yeah, I love that point. And Rich Merritt is up in about maybe 10 or 12 minutes. His presentation that I'm going to queue up gets into how to design voice apps for the modern work environment. And so his presentation will do a good job, I think, elaborating on that point, but that's a great point. So are there any unique opportunities for innovation in this space when we talk about marrying together cybersecurity and voice?
Yeah, I think that there are a ton. So we're seeing a lot in terms of voice biometrics. When we were at Project Voice, we saw a couple of individuals who are doing some really great work in that space. And so that's just being able to listen to your voice and Alexa, not only using that for personalization, but to authorize whether you're able to make certain transactions and the other. I think that with things like quick links and stuff coming out, we're going to be able to see some really cool one-time password. I know, like, I've been working on some stuff with clients around like audio one-time passwords and what that looks like and how those things can be generated. So I think that there's going to be a lot of interesting second and third factor authentication possibilities within the voice space, just because it already lends itself really beautifully to some of the stuff we're already doing to secure data.
That's awesome. So you and Bradley and Mike, Antaran, and Daniel have all mentioned quick links. I think you're the perfect person to ask this question to. What are quick links, and have you used or implemented them yet? And if you haven't, no judgment here, because they just came out like 2 weeks ago.
Right.
But if you have, how have you?
Got you. So I haven't used
Mike,
them yet.
sorry, I see Mike laughing. If he wants to jump in on this, be my guest. But go ahead, Paul.
I haven't used quick links yet, but I am prepping to do so at the next approval. We're launching something in the next week. I'm launching a skill in the next week. So once that's approved and live, we do plan on using it in our marketing. Paul, like I do a lot of data-driven marketing as well. And so as soon as quick links, it was really funny because the announcement for what quick links came out like 2 days after. I was like, I've got to figure out a way to kind of jump directly into specific skills. So for those who don't know what a quick link is, basically the quick link is Amazon's created this ability for you to share a link that will allow someone to automatically go ahead and enable that skill and either jump straight to a task or go ahead and have your Alexa enabled device to just go straight to that skill. So there's a lot of ease of adoption and discoverability there, because that's one of the things I think Bradley even mentioned earlier when he was speaking, was that discoverability is something that becomes kind of a problem, especially when you're a smaller business with your skill. How do people find out where it is? Am I going to show up high on there? And so if you can use these quick links, people don't have to worry about the beta instructions, or you don't have to worry as much about adoption. You just send them this link. As long as it's live, they click it and it will automatically go ahead and open it up for you. And you don't have to worry about Alexa maybe finding something that has a similar name or might have had more likes or something like that. So that direct access is huge. And so by the end of the month, I will have like tangible, practical evidence, and we'll talk about it.
Can we do like a co-branded data-driven daily tip on how you implemented your quick links?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that is a game changer though, because I mean, for the last couple of years, like Stuart Crane, who you guys heard from earlier, he was the one who told me like a year ago, okay, Paul, just tell people Alexa launch invocation name. That will usually after 24 to 48 hours of the skill being approved by Amazon and it being in the skill store, that will usually enable the skill just via the voice command, or at least Alexa will know to ask the user to enable the skill, thus not having the friction of having to go into the Alexa app. Once that user has enabled that skill on any device within their Amazon account, it's on any device that's connected to their Amazon account, they can then jump to the custom intents, right? So they can say, like we saw the Carmen Johnston example earlier, you can say, Alexa, ask Carmen Johnston to show me how to make a terrarium. And if it's on the Echo Show, it'll show you the video. If it's not on a device with a screen, it'll have the audio content play. Well, that's skipping to that point in the skill that Paul you're talking about with the quick link. So this is going to be huge. I know we're all excited about it. So there'll be a voice event follow up, data driven daily tip, MBUsable security. on quick links for sure. Okay, so last question for you, Paul. Why should businesses take voice seriously right now?
Because it's the equivalent of getting on YouTube back in 2008. That's how I've been really, how we even met was because I noticed that this is something that is very pervasive, and we're at a point right now where everyone has these things, but everyone is not actually utilizing it, right? You don't have a ton of big players in the marketplace. So if you're a fan of like a Gary Vee, or you're watching Paul Hickey's stuff, you know, you're like, hey, how can I make sure that I'm able to get the largest audience? And a lot of times what's happening is small businesses get a lot of bang for their buck. Now, we may not see, and I think like Carmen spoke about this a little bit earlier, where you're not always able to see the huge numbers initially with your skill, but being there, right? Being able to say, I was the first. Like Carmen can say, I'm the first person in this space that's on that. That gives you this, it lets you be an industry leader very early on, and it allows you to, as the platform grows, you grow with it. You know, you kind of rise with the tide. And so it's something where, especially if, as Q said, if speaking or talking is something that is a strength for you, and it's a lot easier than making a bunch of blog articles, a flash briefing is a great way of establishing yourself as an industry leader for a very low cost.
Very well said, Paul. Thanks again. It's great seeing you, and we'll talk soon. Hopefully you can stick around. We've got Jeff Blankenberg from Amazon coming up in about an hour. Paul had a great segue into Jacqueline Hayes, and it's great to see you, Jackie. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate your time. Jackie runs Crayons and Marketers, which is a great marketing company out of Nashville. And you've done quite a bit of research about multicultural experiences on Alexa and Google Assistant and other voice assistants. Can you tell us about Crayons and Marketers, about yourself, and how did you get into voice in that market research?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Paul. Can you hear me okay? Am I clear? Wonderful. Well, hello. Good afternoon. Central time. Paul, I don't know what time it is where you are, but Crayons and Marketers is a full service marketing company using the power of story, strategy, and design to help our clients communicate their brand messages and attract new business. So we've been in business for about 7 years now, and we are a data-driven firm, very much like yours, Paul, and so that's why we work so well together, and we've had an opportunity to work on so many things, and so thank you for having me. Now, we use market research to power just about everything that we're doing. So we work with clients who are B2B, B2C, and we just so happen to have a client out on the West Coast who is a cultural insights marketing agency. And so we are in the data. And so it's one thing to talk about voice control products from a B2B standpoint, but also understanding how consumers use voice products is essential. And so just so happens, we conducted research earlier this year, fielded in March, about how consumers use voice control products. And in that study, what we found is that about 50% of the respondents use voice control products, of which, if you can probably guess, 32% were Alexa users and 25% are Google Home. And so there's a sliver of Apple HomePod users, but again, the bulk are dominated by Alexa and Google Home. So if you were to look at that, that's the total market. Now, if you were to drill that down to actual ethnicity and generational cohorts, we find that millennials are the generations that are most likely to use voice control products. And among the ethnic groups, we see Asian Americans are the most likely to own a voice control product, and Hispanics are the least likely.
Amazing. Yeah, that's really interesting data. So tell us more about maybe how you think that kind of data can be used by businesses to take some action, maybe in maybe in the environment that we're in now, or heading into the future in 2021?
Well, absolutely. I think it's important as brands continue to try to get in front of today's consumer. And so it's important that we are tuned in to how consumers consume information. And so although text and blogs and things are still relevant and still great, but in today's atmosphere, we have so much more content, so many more access points that individuals can have information. And so it is essential that companies understand how their consumer base engages content, how they use it, and what opportunities can we use in order to create relevant campaigns on channels that consumers are looking for that information. And if you're looking at multicultural marketing, it is imperative that you understand how these different demographics use technology. If you were to look at Asian Americans and Hispanic consumers, they are very tech-centric. So they are social influencers. They over-index on social media use. They over-index on technology adoption in general. And so knowing that when you're developing your marketing campaigns, you're going to skew toward more digital because you know that's how they consume content.
Yeah, that's very, very well said. I agree. Great point. I think, we talk with like Michael from Carrot, and he's on the product development side of the platform, and then integrating the voice app. And I think that it'd be interesting to get your take from a marketing standpoint. If a client were to come to you and just ask you about voice, how would Crayons and marketers kind of, I guess, reverse engineer that and kind of advise them on how voice could fit within their marketing ecosystem?
And we have amazing clients, and whenever we onboard new clients, they immediately want to go for the new shiny thing. And so we always try to walk our clients back to who is your audience and what are they looking for, and what are your goals? What are you trying to do? When you determine your goals and who your audience is and how they consume information, again, that's important. And that's when we get into the conversations of developing buyer personas so that we understand who these individuals are, where they get their information, who they are influenced by. Then we can start talking about the different tactics that we're going to use to reach them. But you won't really be able to do that unless you understand who your consumer or your client is. And so once we determine that, then we can start doing that research to understand how they consume media. And then part of that research is, working with marketing research companies like Think Now, because they are in the multicultural space. And so they understand per cohort how each ethnicity responds to various stimuli in the economy. And so just looking at some of the research from this recent report, when we look at what voice control products are primarily utilized for, we look for music, for example. 66% of individuals surveyed said that they use their voice control products to access music, of which African Americans and Hispanics are the most likely to use it for shopping and ordering, but Asian Americans and women over-index on using it for looking at the weather. And older for checking the news. You would think that would be maybe some young folks trying to see what's going on, trying to get involved, but checking the news on your voice control product actually skews older. And so it's really that information. You have to understand how each demographic utilizes voice control products in order to effectively reach them. Even if you're trying to run an ad campaign on your voice control product, if you don't know who's listening, you won't know if it's going to be effective. You won't know what they're looking for. And so to be super relevant, it really is essential to have the research to be able to develop campaigns that are relevant. And when you look at Hispanic Americans, do they want their Alexa in English or do they want it in Spanish? There's data out there that tells you exactly what they're saying they want. and you need to be tapped into that.
Yeah, and I think you just hit on something that's super important, that is like a real it's a real moment in every creation of these voice experiences with businesses, and that is the starting point. Like, how do you get started? Because for some reason everybody knows already, even if they haven't created a voice app or been part of creating a voice app, that you can't really put everything about your company into the voice app. It's not going to work. No one's going to sit there and listen that long to content without the ability to like do something or navigate it or tell it to stop or exit or something, or like inevitably there's going to be frustration. And so I think what you just described to me is like, there is the ability to use data to come up with the starting point for what your voice app could have that could really complement everything else that you're trying to do. And it's important to take the time to analyze that before you just jump in. And I know that had we been able to get together in person, had the world not changed, and we'd been able to get together in person, you and I started talking about you coming to the Nashville Voice Conference and presenting this research and really getting into it. And it's super fascinating. I hope that there's an opportunity in the future where we can kind of unveil that, because you're an amazing presenter and you have so many good insights. But thank you so much for your time today. And I really think that for a virtual event, and we've got much more coming up, but for a virtual event so far, I think that this format has done a pretty okay job of getting everybody in and getting everybody the opportunity to kind of share some insights. And yours were certainly valuable. So I appreciate that, Jackie.
Thank you.